To discuss the effectiveness of an assessment tool, we can look at three main categories. Is the assessment developmentally appropriate for the child that you are assessing? Is it culturally and linguistically appropriate? And is it individually appropriate for a child who may have special needs? To go back in and look at each category gives us a lot of information, maybe what to ask or to evaluate every time that we give an assessment. We need to think about these things. So first, let's look at developmentally appropriate. Is the assessment appropriate for the age and the stage of the learner? Are we giving them a formal test? Are we asking them to do something that would require them to sit for long periods of time? Are we asking them to do something that could be practiced in a different way? So we must really look at the tool we're choosing. When I even think of the PSSA tests that are given in schools right now, we're asking third graders to sit for 3 and 4 hours at a time. That's not developmentally appropriate. We wouldn't ask them to sit any other day for that long without a break. So we have to look at that. Is it developmentally appropriate for the age and stage? Also, the context in which the assessment is given can really affect the results. Is it too hot in the classroom? Is it too cold in the classroom? Are the children hungry? Are they tired? Are they sleepy? One of the things that I saw with my own daughter last year when she was 5, I homeschooled her, and we worked on the kindergarten curriculum because she missed the cutoff to go to kindergarten by her birthday. I knew she was ready, and so I worked with her, and she went to a pre-K in the afternoons. And in February, I contacted the school, and I said I'd really like her to be a first grader. She has met all the standards for kindergarten, and is there anything I can do to get her tested to see if you would approve her to be a first grader? Long story short, they eventually said she could be evaluated. And so they brought her in to do a testing. And it was supposed to be a kindergarten / first grade screening. My little one is very perceptive, and she understood that this was a big deal. And she got a little bit stressed out about it. So the context in which they were giving this put a lot of pressure on her because she knew depending on how she performed, they would either allow her to go to first grade, which she really wanted, or they would make her stay in kindergarten. And so she also was in a new building, an elementary school that was just built. She had never been in before. She was being evaluated by a principal and a reading specialist who she'd never met before. And she spent about 15 or 20 minutes with them and came out, and I then conferenced with the principal, and he said, nope, she's not ready. She did not do anything that is conducive to being a first grader. And he showed me some of her test results, and they were very, very inaccurate, but that's what she performed for them. So I said, you know what? This is not reflective of what she knows. I think the situation stressed her out, and I think we need to come back and revisit this at a different time, that she's not ready or today was too much for her. And I also did not think the tools that they chose to assess her gave them a very big picture. I didn't feel like in 15 minutes of just meeting a child, you would know whether they were ready for a certain grade level, whether it be kindergarten or whether it be first grade. So we really have to look at the context of the individual, and are they going to perform accurately, that you get a true reflection or picture of them as a learner? That is really going to depend on the conditions, and are they developmentally appropriate? So the last category is the students may or may not be motivated to even participate. If the material is too hard, they're going to tune out. If it's too easy, they may be bored and they may tune out. If they don't really care, they may tune out. Or the opposite, kind of like my daughter, she was so motivated that she kind of psyched herself out because she was overly motivated and rushed through things. So we see that developmentally, especially with our young kiddos, assessments can really be a form of a problem. Back to my long story short, She ended up having another time to test closer to the end of the year. She did very well, although it still wasn't a complete picture of what I knew she could do. She went to first grade. She is now toward the end of her first grade year, and she's developmentally at the end of second grade. She's had a fantastic year. But when it comes time for her teacher to assess her in reading, writing, or math, she freaks out. She's still, even though she's in a much more comfortable situation, she loves her teacher, she loves her classroom. When it comes down to test time, when they have a math test at the end of a unit, they have a district writing assessment, she has a reading test to move her to a new level, she does not perform well. And we've spoken to her several times about it, and she said she's so worried about making a mistake, she can't focus or concentrate, and she just does not do a good job. And her teacher said she knows this, and it doesn't matter because all throughout everything that she does in reading, writing, and math, she's taking observational notes. She's filling out checklist data every day when she does her learning center or her guided reading group or her writing in her journal. The teacher's making note of what she can do. And she said, those tests are just a formality in my classroom, that I don't need that data for her because I can prove that she is making significant progress. And so that is a more developmental tool for that specific child. Some of the other kids are fine taking that test. They don't put that pressure on themselves. And so they can have those checks that really are specific to a skill. And it's fine. So we really need to know our individuals and know, is this tool going to meet their needs and give us a good picture of them? And that's the other point to assessment and the effectiveness, is to have multiple assessments of the same thing. So if a child doesn't do the way you expect them to do on one assessment of the same skill, that they would have another opportunity to showcase that with you. So developmentally appropriateness is probably the number one indicator of an effective assessment. Now, there's two other categories, and they're much smaller. We have, is it culturally and linguistically appropriate? And we look at, is the child's culture or language going to affect the outcome? Right now, the PSSA is given only in English. So if a child in the classroom does not speak English, they're still taking the PSSA in English. Now, I don't know about you, but I know if I was given a PSSA test in Spanish, I would do very poorly, even if I knew how to do the skills, because it's not written in my language. So we have to, obviously, this is ridiculous, but when we give an assessment to a child, we have to make sure they understand there's no language barrier. And also culturally, we have to make sure they understand the questions we're giving them. Children from other cultures may not have the experiences that are on exams or tests that we give them, even diagnostic tools, because they just haven't been exposed to the questions. So we need to look specifically if anything would skew the results based on their language or culture. And the last category is it individually appropriate for a child with special needs? And when we look at physical disabilities, speech, hearing, vision, even cognitive disabilities, do they have a learning disability? Do they have an IEP? Are there accommodations that we need to make as the teacher to meet the learner's needs for the assessment to really be valid? Is the tool best for their accommodations? And what modifications do we need to make? Just like when we plan a lesson, we have to make modifications and adaptations for our special needs learners. The same thing is true when we test them. Do they need more time? Can they give the answers orally instead of writing them down? Is there a better tool to assess that specific child? So we really want to look at these three categories, and that will tell us if what we're giving as an assessment is going to be effective at giving us the results that we need to plan our instruction. Okay, if we give an assessment that's not going to give us clear results, then it's a waste of everyone's time. And we're going to try this out on the next slide.